The Mafia's Good Girl, Chapter 25. Damon's point of view. 12:01 a.m. The clock was staring at Damon's face like it was mocking him. Damon's jaw clenched instinctively. It was already midnight, and there was no sign of Violet around. Damon never got rejected by anyone before, so this was a hard blow to his ego. Damon was pacing around the office restlessly. In a fit of anger and disappointment, he picked up a bottle of whiskey from the desk and threw it across the room. The bottle shattered into pieces as it hit the wall and crumbled to the floor. This is fucking bullshit. Watching the glass shatter in front of him brought some relief, but it wasn't enough. Damon was seething mad. He didn't know how to handle such a humiliating rejection, especially from an 18-year-old little girl. No one says no to Damon Van Zandt. No one. Damon had been waiting for her all night long, and he wasn't having any more of it. With fire burning in his eyes, Damon took quick steps and headed for the door. But when he pulled the door open, he saw someone standing there, and his jaw dropped instantly. A girl in a black dress was standing right in front of him, and she had her hand up like she was about to knock on the door. Damon stopped his tracks, and his eyes widened. He couldn't believe who was standing in front of him in his very house. It was Violet Rose Carvey, the angel in the flesh. Violet's point of view. I don't know why I came back here. Everyone was telling her she should go out with Jesse tonight. Dylan made her promise that she wouldn't think about Damon's offer again. But as the hours passed, Violet realized being with Jesse wasn't what she wanted. She wanted something else completely different, something more exciting and unorthodox. I must be crazy. Hi, Violet said as Damon stood in front of her in the doorway. She had her hand up like she was about to knock, and Damon was about to exit the room. You came? He said with a stoic expression. I came, she replied. Damon paused for a moment and studied her expression. Violet was panting a little as she was running to get up here. She was wearing a tight little black dress and high heels. It wasn't easy climbing up a flight of stairs with them on. But you're late, he said. It's only a minute. Still late. Well, I'm sorry. Violet let out a sigh. She arrived here from the other side of town within half an hour. She'd been running all over, and she was only 1 minute late. In her mind, it shouldn't be a problem. Do you still want to do this or not? She said again, sounding rather irritated. Damon didn't look too happy with her response, but he stepped back and opened the door for her anyway. Violet stepped into the room, and Damon closed the door. He then gestured for the chair and said, "Have a seat." Violet sat on the chair, facing the desk, and Damon went to the bookshelf. He was looking for something, and Violet was watching every move he made like a hawk. Damon pulled out a file from the bookshelf and started reading it. He was taking his time reading, and Violet grew anxious. Her brain kept on doubting her decision, and that little voice in her head was telling her that she should run. You're making a big mistake. You know it's never a good idea to make a deal with Damon Van Zandt. He's going to rip you to shreds. Despite all the horrible things her brain was saying, Violet stayed in her seat. She knew in her heart that this was a once-in-a-lifetime deal, and she would regret it if she didn't take it. If Violet was being completely honest, the money was a big incentive, but it wasn't her only motivation. There was something else that drove her to this decision. It was this indescribable feeling that she had when she was with Damon. Underneath the terror and danger that she felt with him, there was a sense of freedom and deliverance. Violet never felt anything like that before, and she was curious to know more. You're gonna need to sign a new contract, Damon said finally, breaking her train of thought. He then put the thick file down on the desk, right in front of Violet. The 30 days will start the moment you sign it. Wait, I want to read through it first, Violet said quickly and reached for the file. She didn't read the fine print before, and Damon screwed her over. She wasn't going to make the same mistake again. Go ahead, he said as he sat down on his chair. Violet opened the file and her eyes widened at the number of pages inside. There were at least 20 pages in there, more than she thought necessary. "How many pages are there?" she gasped. "It's gonna take me days to read through it all." "You don't have days. You're already late." "I told you, the offer expires at midnight," Damon replied in a firm and commanding tone. "You should have come here earlier if you want to negotiate your terms." Violet sighed as she flipped through the pages and skimmed some words. She wouldn't have the time to read through it, and Damon wouldn't have the patience. But if she were to blindly obey him like before, who knows what he might do? "So what? You want me to just sign it right now?" she asked. "What else is there to think about, Violet?" Damon asked back. "It's pretty self-explanatory. A month of your time for $3 million. But will I be allowed to go out of the estate? For when you don't need me?" "No. Why not?" "I want to see my family. And that young cop?" He cut her off, sounding somewhat irritated. "Is he your boyfriend? Is he talking about Jesse?" "No, he's not my boyfriend," Violet stated. "I was gonna say, I want to see my family and get some clothes. I can't go for an entire month, not being able to see my mom." Damon paused for a beat and narrowed his eyes at her. It looked like he was thinking hard about something. "No, you can't leave the estate for the duration of the contract under any circumstances," Damon said finally. "But we'll get you clothes. Don't worry about that. Once you sign the contract, you're not leaving here for any reason. I can't have you out there as a liability." "Liability?" she asked. Damon didn't explain any further, even though Violet was looking at him in confusion. She didn't understand why her leaving the estate would be a liability for him. Was he worried that she might be a spy or something? Did he think she was going to sell information to his enemies? "If you need to see your family, I can arrange to have them visit the estate. Maybe once or twice a week," he said instead. "Wow, how generous of you," Violet scoffed and rolled her eyes sarcastically. Damon's jaw was clenched, and he leaned his head to the side. "You should be careful with that smart mouth. It's gonna get you in trouble." Violet felt a shiver, and she gulped instinctively. Damon's eyes were serious and dark. He was looking at her like a lion hunting its prey. Violet shuffled uncomfortably and averted her gaze. "So what are you planning to do to me for the next 30 days?" she asked. "Anything and everything," he replied. "At any hours of the day and in any way I want." Damon got up from his seat and walked around the desk. He sat on the desk right next to Violet, and she felt her throat getting dry. He was only an arm's length away, and he reached for Violet's face. He tilted her chin up to him, and he studied her eyes. "Oh, come on. Don't give me that look." Damon shook his head at the doubt and fear in her eyes. "Hey, I'll make sure they are things that you will enjoy too." "Things that I will enjoy? Am I gonna get hurt?" Violet asked point-blankly. This was her only fear going into this deal, since she knew how rough he could be with women. "You will," he said, "but only in the best way possible." "What does that mean?" "That means I won't do anything without your consent. I won't hurt you unless you ask for it, unless I ask for it." Is he mental? And am I gonna have to call you master too? Violet blurted. Damon paused for a beat, and his lips twitched into a smirk. "For the next 30 days, I am your master and you are my slave. So yes, I expect you to address me as such, slave." "Any more questions?" he said again. Violet had so many more questions, but Damon's tone of voice was telling her to wrap it up. Violet thought hard for one last question to ask him. A question that would help her make this decision. "Are you really not going to do anything without my consent?" she asked. "I can still say no to things." "Yes," he said. "Go ahead and pick your safe word." "Safe word? That's the code for me to stop," he explained. "Any one word will do." Violet's eyes darted around the room, and they settled on the window. The moon outside was bright, and the stars were twinkling in the night. "Star?" she asked. You can say that word whenever you want to stop. I'm not going to do anything you don't want to. You have my word, Damon said as he stood up straight. But trust me, baby girl, you're not going to want to say no. Violet was taken aback at how confident he was. He had probably done this kind of deal with many other girls before, so this wasn't anything new to him. This was probably just another business deal for Damon, but for Violet, this was life or death. It's only 30 days of your life, Violet. It's not the end of the world. But wait, Damon Van Zandt is a dangerous man. What if he does something extreme? What if I die here? Violet's brain and heart were fighting over the decision. On one hand, she knew how reckless of a decision this was, but on the other hand, she secretly wanted this experience. She wanted to feel more of what she felt when she was with him. Maybe after 30 days, she'd get enough of it and she wouldn't want it anymore. But if she walks away from this deal now, she'd forever be left wondering what would have happened if she'd stayed. I'll give you another minute to think it over. You have 60 seconds, Damon said suddenly, as he checked his watch. It's now or never. Violet looked up at Damon, and his eyes were glued to his watch. He was counting down the seconds, and Violet's heart began to race. She realized maybe he was doing some kind of manipulative tactic on her to get her to make a decision. And it was at this very moment that Violet knew she already made her decision, the moment she left Jesse at the pier and jumped on a cab to get over here. I don't need 60 seconds, Violet said as she stood up straight. She was standing right in front of Damon, and her face was only inches away from his chest. Damon took his gaze off the clock and stared at her eyes. Her blue and purplish eyes were bright and confident as she said, I choose now. Damon didn't say anything for the longest time, but a smile slowly crept up his face. Violet then reached for the contract and a pen on the desk, and she signed her name on the dotted line. After she finished signing her name, she put the pen down and turned her face back to Damon again. Good girl, Damon said with that devilish smirk playing on his face. I knew you'd make the right choice. Before Violet could say another word, Damon grabbed her by the waist and pulled her closer to him. Violet's breath hitched as her body was pressed up against him. Then he gripped her face firmly, and his thumb grazed over her lips. Violet looked up and saw Damon's eyes were hooded and dark. He was staring at her lips, and his lips were parting open slightly. Is he going to kiss me? Violet's heart was beating faster and faster in anticipation. She also felt a weird sensation in her stomach, like she was giddy and excited for no reason. Damon cocked his head to the side, and it seemed like he was inching for her face. Violet closed her eyes in response and waited for what's to come. This is it. This is the moment where I'm giving up a month of my life to be with the devil. Violet held her breath and inched her face up to him. She thought that his lips would land on hers, but the moment never came. Violet felt nothing but dry, cold air. And suddenly, Violet felt his body pulling away. And then she heard him say, "Take off your clothes."